we're going to talk about modifiers. Now, modifiers modifies or change an object non-destructively. What that means is that the original object stays as it is, and then you have something in the stack that changes or adds features onto it, but the original object state is still there if you take off those modifiers. So for example, let's just add a modifier. A cube is kind of like low density, so we're gonna delete this. We're going to add maybe, let's say, a torus, for example. So one thing we could do is add a modifier here. So if I go to modifier properties, which is the wrench icon, you'll see add modifier. I could click on this, and then you have options to the different modifiers you could put on here. Now in later disciplines or lessons, you'll use these as you need it. But a simple one I guess we could choose is, let's say, a simple deform. So it adds simple things, let's say twist, like bend, like taper, or stretch on it. So let's say stretch. If I click on here and move, you could see you could, I guess, stretch out the geometry here. However, the original state of the object is still there. So it's basically the way the object is constructed is there, and then you add a modifier on top of it. So it's modifying what's already there. So you could close this by pressing X, and you get rid of the modifier, and it goes back to the original state. I press Control Z to undo and put back the modifier to show you. One thing though, you could actually bake in or basically apply the changes the modifier does into the actual object itself, and therefore it's at that point it will be destructive, and that means it's actually baked into the actual object. So to do that, you click on this arrow button, the drop down here, and choose apply, or you can press Control A while your mouse is floating into the modifier pane. And if you do that, now you notice there's no modifier stack in here because that's now baked into the actual object. It's not creating the original object and then modifying it afterwards. So I'll press Control Z to undo that. So now the modifier stack is back. So one thing about the modifier as well, as mentioned, I could delete it by pressing the X button. I'll press Control Z to bring it back. Go back to stretch, for example. So modifiers, every modifier have this menu on top. So I showed a couple of things on here. One, you have this twirl down thing that basically just collapses or expands the options in a modifier. Then you have the name of the modifier. You could rename it here. You have the icon to basically let you know what type of modifier it is. And then you have these options here. I show the one here, the drop down is to apply the object or bake it in. You could duplicate. So let's say I say duplicate. I create another copy of this modifier under it. And then you could press X next to it to get rid of it. Just to show you about duplicate, when you do duplicate, so you could actually stack modifiers that collapses it. So this is the second one. And the order of operations is from top down. So this one happens first, then the other one. So instead of like stretch, let's say we go to twist. So the first one's stretching. And then after we stretch, we do a twist. We're twisting it, right? If you want to reorder them, you could click the side over here and drag it to the order you want. So in this case, twist will happen first, and then stretch. And then stretch will happen afterwards. Now again, you could get rid of this. Let's say I get rid of the first one. Just to go back, we're going to use twist as an example here. Just to show some of the other icons here, similar to the outliner here. You could click this button where you're displaying the effect of the modifier in the viewport here. So if I take that off, you do not see the modifier effect. This could be helpful if it could be computationally expensive and you want to have the effect in the final render, or maybe the export, depending on what your pipeline is doing, to, let's say, a game engine or wherever you're exporting to. But you don't want to see the effect in the viewport. And this probably might be more relevant if you're doing rigging a character or something like that, and you have a modifier stack and some of the effects you want, but you don't want to see it in real time. But in the final version of it, you might want the effect on. So the effect is actually still on here, just not visualized in the viewport. So the other icon is if it's visible in the render. So right now, if I take it off in the viewport here, like I have right now, if I still render it, go render image, you'll still see that the bend is on, or the twist effect, is still on. It's just not visible in the viewport. If I turn it on in the viewport and then, render, obviously it still will be in the render because I didn't turn it off in the render. So you see it in the viewport and you see it in the render. I could click on the camera icon and turn it off. So in this case, I see it in the viewport, but I do not see it in the render in this case. Now, you might want to do this maybe for visualization. It might help you visualize, depending on your workflow, to have some type of modifier on, but you don't want it in the final effect or in the render. So this could be useful in that sense. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.